Hello, and welcome to the Pragmatic Live podcast series, where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product management, product marketing, and other market and data-driven professionals with some of the best minds in the industry. I'm Rebecca Kalogeris, Vice President of Marketing and Product Strategy at Pragmatic Institute, and your host for this episode. I am extremely excited today to have Steve Goodyear, founder and product owner of Realizer Services, and the very first person to earn a PMC VIII certification. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
All right, Steve. Why don't we start, give our listeners a little bit of context. Tell me about you, Steve, and your background and sort of how you got where you are today.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, my background really came from IT. So I do a lot of information technology work and kind of built up with software through consulting and through as well as working for companies and doing that. And then that led, particularly through consulting, of into more designing services and now thinking about designing products.
Awesome. So what drove you to become PMC VIII? And for everyone here listening, the 8th course was the design course for you, correct? Our newest one?
That's right. Yep. I just did the design one about a month ago, I think. Yeah. Really, it started more a recommendation. So in consulting, thinking of, a lot of it was really kind of reinventing the wheel each time a customer has a need and thinking, okay, well, we could offer some services around that, to thinking, how can we think of that like a product and making it more repeatable and efficient, and the customer gets better expectations. They know what they're getting, and we're not reinventing the wheel each time. And so we're speaking the same language. And anyways, long story short, someone recommended I try Pragmatic, and so I did the foundation course, and then the focus and the build, I think. And so I was just trying those really to think from a consulting side, how would I apply that to professional services and turn professional services into more of a product? And from there, it just kind of ballooned, and I really liked it. And it was like a really energetic 3 days, and I got a lot out of it. And so then I just kept chipping away at the rest, I guess. Yeah. And then design came out. Design, I hadn't really intended to be more the level 8. It was more an interest of it. I've never really been a designer, although I designed software solutions. It was more thinking through in designing software. I'd crossed paths with different types of design disciplines, and so it was really neat to read about the new course and think of how that could fill in some of my blind spots and know better where to use those different things and how they could apply, and then think of how to apply that in product design.
It's one of the things you touched on that I think is so interesting about what we do is so often when people think of product, you used to think of hardware or something with a UPC code. Then you start to think of, okay, I get software as a service. But when you think of products and being able to apply the principles of strong product management, strong product marketing, and strong design, it really is, it can be anything. And I think really thinking about how of those implications on services is a really interesting a place to do. And I think those same disciplines can bring so much to a professional services offering.
Absolutely. Yeah. The big thing that struck was really the market problem, right? And thinking of the customer problem, and in professional services, it was easy to like think every time is unique, right? And try and guess. There's a lot of guessing going on when we're creating a proposal, because they only release so much information, and then they invite companies to maybe submit a proposal. But then taking that and taking the framework and viewing it through that lens to think, okay, if this was a product and we were solving that need, what would that look like? And that was pretty neat. It was a pretty neat experience to go through. I'm still working on it. So it's a journey, but just that alone, kind of from that first course, really made a big difference, I think, in my thinking and how I pictured it, because it was less time and materials, let's just get some smart people to solve a problem, and more thinking, okay, we really understand your problem, and here's like a package that could solve it. And so it's more predictable for us, it's more predictable for the customer, and just makes that a little smoother, that whole experience.
Has that switched from sort of time and materials to more solving a problem? Has that changed the way you address pricing?
Very much, yeah, and the pricing bunch will actually help with that too, of rethinking less, because time and materials, it really brings the price around cost, and uh, cost to us, and then it gets really commoditized to every other consultant out there who charges by the hour, and you think, oh well, your hour is more expensive than theirs, and so it really would bring the conversation to that, versus now thinking about it as a product, and really, we address this problem and here's a solution. It's less conversation like that, and it's more, okay, the solution will cost this, and is that valuable? Like it's really aligning the cost with the value, and less about time and materials, and that. So it could be, a, a big thing is it's more predictable for the customer, so that's better. There's less change, there's less negotiation as you go through it, because it's clear what they're getting. But then the price is clearer for them, there's more transparency around that, and it's less commoditized where they're comparing it to other firms. And then for us, it could be better if we get really good at it and really efficient. That's one way to make it more profitable. So over time, it could be more profitable. So rather than having to increase our hourly rates, we could just get better at delivering the things we're good at, as we get good at them and make them repeatable.
And that's such a good point, right? Because the better you are at the faster you can deliver them doesn't really change the value, right? Your efficiency doesn't change how valuable it is for them. And that way they're also paying for outcomes. I mean, it's such a powerful switch, I think, in particular in services, to switch from thinking time and materials, here's how many hours, to here's the problem, here's the desired outcome, and I can deliver it for X.
Yes. Yeah, because really it's a guess on how many hours. Because once you pull back the onion and start working with them, it could take longer, because for a number of reasons, maybe they take a while to get back to you, or maybe there's just some thinking that you got to do on it. Um, and then there's this pressure to be a little quicker because you're costing them money. The meter's running. It's like
Hmm.
having a taxi outside, rather than a nice comfortable limo that's going to get you there for around the same price maybe, but you're not worried about the meter running. It's kind of this guaranteed ride that's going to be comfortable, and get you from A to B.
So let's talk a little bit about design, right? And how the design course you might leverage as a professional services sort of offering and provider.
Yeah, it was. I looked at it two lens. One was really thinking about products and the software we deliver, and so it was in part that, but then definitely thinking through, as a services organization, what the design would be. And so some big parts there. I mean, one of the standouts from the course was thinking about the user experience map and the journey they go on. So lining that up and where the decision points are. So that's, we could back it up and think from the first time we meet someone who has a need on a service we could help them with. What's that experience like, and what are the different touch points? And then when they engage with us, they have a project they want to do. What's that experience like, and where that might have friction, or slow it down. It was neat being able to map that out. That was one of the takeaways I did, and sort of drew that out more from uh, like an engagement and services experience rather than product experience. But it was the same idea. It was pretty neat applying it to that, because it's eye opening, where it's a good model to be able to think through that whole process, and then see where's the areas we can improve or change to make it a better experience for everybody, and simplify some things that maybe aren't necessary, to improve. Yeah, so that was one big standout for sure from the design course.
One of the things I think that's so neat about the experience mapping too is there's that sort of emotional elements that you map out there.
Mhm.
When there are frustrations, when they're frustrated, when they're worried. And again, not speaking of engaging with you, of course, Steve, but having in my career hired a great deal of professional services and vendors, right? As an executive, there is a definite, it is a different um, it is a somewhat different buying process than buying hardware or software, right? Where it is sort of repeatable no matter what. There are all of these contingencies and pieces, and so I would imagine as your clients and really thinking about the places sometimes where a professional services provider feels the most confident, like they've got this, is actually where they tend to communicate the least. And that can be inversely felt the other way, because that silence can be scary, right? So again, sort of putting yourself in your customer's shoes and your user's shoes in this case to really let you see even just how communication and updates and the process improvements that you could do on something like professional services.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point. As I was building out the timeline, thinking of the motion up front is a lot of questions, because they might be thinking things like, can they really do what they say they're going to do? Is it going to cost what they say it's going to cost? There's all these questions you don't know unless you've worked with them a lot. And you could be putting your reputation internally on this. This could really help your career if you do it. So there's a lot of anxiety early on in the process, that could help from a professional services side. Then we want to craft things so that way, uh, we've done it before. Here's kind of our milestones, so we know we're on track. So that way you could be reassured, and maybe take away some of that anxiety by reducing the commitment, maybe, or showing more of the secret sauce of how we're going to get there, and make you look good, and build it around there, knowing that that's kind of your anxiety early on, and then following that all the way through to make sure we build on that. But yeah, definitely, that's can really help you see, because otherwise it's easy to go in and think of it like you're negotiating, and it's more adversarial, or it could lead that way in different firms, on different types of engagements. And where instead, we really want to come in and make it more like, well, okay, well, we're here to help you, and we're here to make you look good, and we're here to solve this particular problem, and here's our approach, and here's what you can expect, and really build it more around reassuring and a partnership, rather than, yeah, kind of that negotiation. And you're right, knowing when to bring up and show, um, where we've done it in the past, where you might not have thought to ask for something like that, but we know you're potentially anxious really early on, and you don't know how well this is going to go, but you're probably wondering in the back of your mind, if you haven't said. Yeah, so thinking through that makes that process really smooth, and then it helps me stand out, because others aren't doing that as much. And so it makes us very unique in that buying process, especially. And then delivering, as we're delivering, it's less about, checking the checkbox that we've done these tasks, and more about checking in to see, are we having the right impact, and is there anything you need to promote this internally, or something like that, and think it through your needs. So rather than really focusing on a contract, or checking a checklist, we're being more empathetic to everybody involved in the project, and what are the things you might need that's not necessarily in the contract, but that could help you and help make the project more successful.
So you touched on some of this, but we haven't specifically talked about sort of the market and launch, the go to market part of our curriculum. And then again, applying that, I think, to professional service. You talked a little bit about the emotional and the sort of the fear is way too strong a word, right? But the sort of concerns you have before you bought. What else in those courses do you think that you really sort of gravitated to and deployed in your own practice?
The big one was buyer personas, and I think that was in, I can't remember now. I think it was in the marketing one.
Yes.
But that buyer persona idea. So we've thought of user personas before. So that one I've done, and then learned a lot more about. So that I was really happy to kind of get a good template, and standardize the idea of user personas. But then and so that's users of the software we deliver. But then taking that idea and building buyer personas, and thinking through the different buyers, um, of the service. So, there could be someone in procurement who needs to make sure everything's compliant, maybe with the project. But then there's kind of the internal champion who wants a solution, because their job's difficult, and they want to. In our case, we do a lot of automation, or document management, and they want to streamline some of those processes. Um, thinking through their needs and how to arm them to kind of sell it internally, and the process they would go through. That was really interesting in a market sense, because it really changed and helped me think more from a customer side. How are they going to buy this? And beyond just how are they going to discover it, but the buying process is tricky, because they see it and they like it, but there's so many different people that might be involved, and think it through who those people are, and kind of mapping that out and using these buyers personas. That was a really valuable tool. That one especially really made a big difference for me.
One of my favorites, though, to be fair, I'm biased on the product marketing side of the house. But I think that I always say, like, if you really understand your buyers, there's usually, since we're B2B space, right? There's generally more than one. Everything you do in marketing and go to market makes so much more sense, right? You
Mhm.
understand the language they use, you know where they are, you understand the problems and how they describe them. And then you're really reflecting back to them, not in a parroting way, but in a way that helps them find themselves in your messaging, right? And for them to believe that you understand their pain and that you have that you're credible in your ability to solve it. Super powerful.
That credibility really nails it too. Yeah, but like, whereas before it would be, we talk a lot about features, and it would be more technical talk, which resonates with some people in IT, but the actual buyers, the manager, they have different questions, and the procurement person, they have different questions,
Mhm.
and finance is involved, they have different questions. So whereas the sales might have taken a lot longer, and again, thinking of that journey too, it might have added more anxiety, because that manager who liked it, and we're speaking the technical language to them, they don't have the right words then to go and sell this internally to finance, saying, oh, I want to approve this budget to do this project. We haven't armed them with enough, so we either have to hope they have enough, or hope they have a good relationship. That would have been before, but now that we've thought through all these personas and that journey, we can make sure they have the right talking points, make sure we're able to support them and know where else they need to go, and it makes it easier to connect with the right people too, so that way we've matched the right projects and the right customers that are looking for the type of projects we do.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, Steve. So one of the very, very big things that we teach, right, are Hedo visits. So is that something that you guys have deployed? Can you tell me how that's going?
This was another one of the biggest changes. So uh, in the last firm I worked at, we tried to do a lot of this thinking of product, and how do we turn professional services into a product. And then looking back, we never did any Hedo visits. It was just, we got a bunch of us in a room and we brainstormed on a whiteboard. But now the change is really to gather that, and it's built into our CRM. So we have a little table that collects um, pain points and different data points we can get on customers for different interviews we do, or different things we could collect in the market. So if we see like a post or a blog post or something like that, we'll collect that too. And then debriefing with customers, because one of the things I learned from my last job was nothing important really does happen in the office. Like the the hard part of that was, if we don't go out and talk to other people and do the Hedo visits, we kept reinventing the same things, and we weren't really innovating, even though that's what we were trying to do. We had all the same people in the same room and drawing on the same whiteboards, and didn't really come up with new product ideas that resonated, because we weren't talking to outside people. So yeah, that was one of the biggest changes as well, is collecting those data points, and the terms they use, and understanding how it fits, and then probing deeper to make sure we understand it better as we get it. It's good. We try and do a debrief on projects as well, to get more beyond just the lessons learned of how the project go and how are we to work with, but probing a bit on that to see, did we solve the problem, and were there other problems, and uh, did did we surprise ourselves on this project, and did you learn anything, and was there anything we could have known ahead of time, or taught you ahead of time, to maybe expand the project or do something different. So that's always a good source. Um, I haven't been good at kind of the win-loss ones though, going to collect them from the loss, but definitely other ones where we have good relationships, we really try and dig in and get more information, and that's just helping us learn and like I say, we put it in our CRM tool, and that collects a lot of data points too. So that way in the future, it'll benefit us even more too, I think.
Now your homework now though is to do the win-loss too, because they're
Yes.
super powerful. And I've done them both direct, which is great, but I've also used some third parties because I think it is one of the easiest things that gets sort of a downgrade. It's the thing that gets dropped
Yeah.
just in the rush for things and the different things. But I find, and I find the information from the wins just as valuable as from the losses. And they're both key. But yes, that's why sometimes a third party works, both from people being sometimes more forthright with them, but also like they can have a steady stream going. So
Keep up
that's your
with it.
homework.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I like that.
Passing it on from the instructors. But in that same thing, and I'm not sure how the product role is divided in your organization, but one of the other things that we talk about as sort of a first step is the gap analysis, right? How good are we doing these activities? How important are they to us as an organization in the spot in the life cycle that we are? And what's the gap? How do we prioritize where to focus? Have you done that?
I did it for my previous organization as well, just because it was I remember doing it that night when I took the foundations course, because it was such a good experience to go through and eye-opening that I went through there. I have it as a bit of a checklist. I haven't checked in on it recently enough though. So yeah, that's some more homework for me. But no, I remember
I'll stop
doing
assigning homework. Sorry.
but it was quite eye-opening, and it's a good checklist to make sure we kind of set ourselves up and don't fall into bad habits of stop talking to customers and moving into a room with a whiteboard with just ourselves. It could be easy to fall into those habits if we don't have that kind of structure and that framework that encourages us to get out there and do more research that's outside the office.
I think it's good for keeping us honest. I also think, in all 37 boxes are important. Everything we teach in the 8 courses, I think is really valuable. But you do have to prioritize. There is just a limited number of resources. And that's the other reason it's good. What we don't want is for someone to be like, there's so much, I can't possibly do it all. Right. It's like, no, of course you can't, but let's figure out what's the most important. Let's tackle that first. Then let's add that thing. So it keeps focus, but I also think it sometimes relieves some of that tension and pressure of not being able to do all the different homework from all the different courses that you want to. Right. So it's good both ways.
I agree. Yeah, and that's been my experience. I'm more iterative. I still have the paper handout of the framework and haven't gone through and checked them. I probably should, and that will help me focus. But every once in a while, I kind of use that to think of what else to add as I get good at the other ones. But yeah, I've gone through and used a bit more focus and pick my favorites that really moved it a lot. But yeah, I agree. It's even just picking a little made a big difference. And as I get more, and as we get more teams that could more on the team that could fill in more of those blanks, can help as well.
So one of the things that we've added to our products and in the time that you've been attending our courses is the Pragmatic Alumni Community. And is that, I would love just to kind of get your thoughts on that and how you've utilized that and where you've seen the value.
It's been great. I joined when they first launched it, and there was a big rush of chatting, and then it went quiet for a while, and then there was a big rush, I think, as everyone got used to it and came back. So it was and I joined a whole bunch of communities in there. So that's another one. Maybe I got to focus more and pare back and think which ones I should really contribute to. But I got to meet a few people, which was nice. So some of the discussions I could add some things and they're more in my area. But as I was experimenting with some of the boxes and some of the product ideas I've had, so some side projects or think it through from a services side, it's been a good place to add questions, and people have answered. And then said, "Oh, hey, I'll have a quick Zoom with you if you want to talk through this. This is pretty interesting. I've done the same thing last year, and it's been neat. So I've made a couple friends through there, which has been good beyond ones I've gone to classes with, and they've connected with me and talked through it. And then I'm trying to do the same thing now to pay it forward. But it's neat. It's a neat community of, I don't know how many people are in there, but I know it started with 200 of us, so it's a lot more than that now anyway. But yeah, it's been a neat community of just so many different backgrounds, because there's a lot. I mean, a full range. There's a lot in software that's kind of in the same area as me, but then there's a lot in like healthcare and
Mm.
physical products, and so it's just so neat to see so many different perspectives. Outside the class, because the classes are they're full days. I mean, there's a lot of work. There's some group work and activities in each of them, but it's not the same as the community, where it's more free form, and people jump in, and you get a lot of connections that way.
And that's my favorite part of the community, is sort of those connections with people. And one of the things I find interesting is so many people wanted the community so they could find people like them, people in the same industry with the same offerings. And there's a ton of value in that. But I also find such interesting value in the way people with completely different products solve their problems, because they really come at it from a different history with a different perspective. And sometimes there are pieces in there that are so applicable, but so foreign to how, software as a service approaches it, but you see how hardware does it and you think, oh, there's some kernels in there that are really interesting to explore.
Yes, yeah, I agree, and they're just interesting perspectives and backgrounds, and yeah, interesting stories. But being able to discover that, I wasn't expecting that really. I thought, like, I joined a couple of the communities, and it was like software as a service, and I'm kind of interested in that and wanted to learn more. So I've a bit of a fly on the wall listening to the discussions. But then that moved me to, I can't remember what group that eventually brought me to, but I eventually went and joined that one, and it was completely different, not software people, and talking about all relevant things that I'm interested in. Yeah, so it was a nice way to really expand my circles and see how other products do it that still that's applicable, which was neat. So
Yep.
just yeah, because I remember when I started Pragmatic, they had a site, but it was really to download templates, and
Mm-hmm.
that was valuable and good because all the templates were helpful. But that was missing. Yeah, not to be able to hear how other people were using it and continue the conversation. So yeah, it was nice. It was nice when they added in the alumni community for sure.
Awesome. All right, Steve, this has been super enjoyable, and we've talked about a lot of different things. If you were going to have our listeners think about two things, two takeaways from your career, from the classes you've taken, what you've done professionally, two things that they would maybe do differently tomorrow based on what we talked about today, what would it be?
The first one would really be focusing on the customer and the customer problem. Maybe people are already doing that more, but that was a big, and it seems in hindsight's like such common sense, I guess. It's obvious in hindsight, but really focusing on that uh, kind of opened my eyes and solved a lot of questions I had, or a lot of blocks maybe I had. So that would be a big one. Really know it well, and if you were to pick one thing, one block, I'd really choose that one first, and do it well. The other one is kind of a second one. I almost want to say buyer personas because I like that, but I already talked about it so much. So maybe I'll repeat myself. But I really like the buyer personas too, because thinking about the buyers, it helped me understand the process more and understand why um, sales cycles were maybe slowing down, or why things weren't being adopted in the way I thought they might have been, because I was really looking at it from my own lens and not from how someone would want to buy or procure services. So and solve a particular problem and make sure I'm speaking around there. So the two kind of go hand in hand, and they're really early, I guess, in sort of selling and marketing. But I'd probably leave it with those two, is really, what is the problem in the market, and really know that well. because so much of the product design and product solutions come out of that. And then, yeah, really know the buyers, the different people involved in that experience, in that journey. And then, yeah, the rest will sort of fall into place after that. But knowing those two, I think, are probably my two favorite today anyways.
And those are great ones, Steve. Perfect answers. All right, Steve, I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope you come back and talk to us along your path, keep us updated. It was very enjoyable. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great. Thanks so much.
That does it for today's episode. Thanks everyone for listening. And don't forget to join us next week when we tackle another great topic designed to help you elevate your product, your company, and your career.